You couldn't make it up. It just seems as though everybody is trying to score points off each other, and by going for the children of the president, for heaven's sake. What's going on? Can you explain to us?
I mean, I think it's really important, and as you just noted, that you've got to cut through political manipulation and a lot of political distortion to get to the legal facts of the case. The legal facts are is that this spring, there was a plea bargain presented to a court in which Hunter Biden would plead guilty to failure to pay taxes. He did pay back taxes and penalties of more than $1 million, but there was going to be a misdemeanor charge for his initial, let's say, negligence in paying his bills. Then there was a second charge, which was that he had possessed a gun while under the influence, in this case, of cocaine. And what the judge said is, look, I'm not convinced that the gun charge is a misdemeanor. I think it might be a felony. You folks, the prosecutors, Biden's lawyers, need to go back and review it. They went back and reviewed it, but they could not come to a resolution of this. I think, without knowing for sure, that, of course, Biden would not want to plead guilty to a felony, which could carry potentially a sentence in prison. And so at that point, it was announced, all right, that the Justice Department is going to have this special counsel, David Weiss, who's been investigating this case for years. And we can talk about the reasons for that. I think it may be that, but we don't know, there may be new evidence. It could be, secondly, that it's leverage to get Biden and his lawyers to finally agree to a plea bargain. Or thirdly, I think it could be an attempt to accelerate this, get this case resolved before we get into 2024, which does happen to be a presidential election year.
Isn't it the case, it's fair to say, that there is so much tit for tat going on here, and it kind of exposes to us in Britain the political nature of the American judiciary? You know, we have a Democrat going after, appointed by President Obama, former President Obama, going after Trump. We have a Republican going after Biden. Is this just political tit for tat designed to cause damage during the presidential elections, or do you think we'll actually see convictions here?
Again, the legal facts on both sides, starting with Biden, and that is, you know, the legal process has been observed for years through here. This case was prosecuted, evidence was collected, it was presented before a grand jury, an indictment was returned, and then you had the question of whether you go to trial, which was we are now. Nobody who's a legal specialist says that there's been a violation of legal process on this. I must add also that there has been no evidence presented that there is, quote, to use the words of all the Trumpists and a guy named Nigel Farage, that there's a Biden crime family. There's been no evidence tying Joe Biden to any of Hunter Biden's possibly illegal activities, including the business activities. Now, on the other side, I think you're referring, although you were kind not to name him, to Donald Trump. Donald Trump faces 3 sets of indictments, 4th set of indictments likely to come down in Georgia this week or next. And those indictments were carried out after a fully above-board legal process, whether it was the case of interference in the 2016 election through the payments to Stormy Daniels, whether it was the movement, possibly illegal, of classified documents from the White House to Florida, or whether it was the attempt to overturn the 2020 election culminating in the Capitol attack. The Justice Department prosecutors moved in accordance with the law, so did judges. So they've given Trump's defense lawyers opportunities at every count to talk about the proceedings that are going on, which is why we will have these trials next year, not because it is, quote, a political witch hunt. It's the question of legal accountability, with Donald Trump presumed innocent until someone, if anybody, decides that he's guilty.
It is extraordinary, as you said, though, that these particular legal arguments are going on at a time when both candidates are going to go to the country and ask to become president. It's extraordinary, isn't it? It just looks so bad.
It's extraordinary, but we've lived in extraordinary times for several years, both here in the UK and in the United States. I think here's the starting point, which is fundamental, and that is no one from any side of the political spectrum should be able to use political manipulation or political spin to put their thumbs on the scales of justice, whether it be for Hunter Biden, whether it be for Donald Trump. And I have to be honest with you here, that the tactics of many who support Donald Trump, including Donald Trump himself, is precisely to do that. By getting the media to talk politics, and not talk about the legal process and the legal system, it assists Trump in trying to undermine that system. That the case is not that he's the defendant here, but the judge is corrupt, the prosecutors are corrupt, the jury is corrupt, professors like me are corrupt, even folks like the media, corrupt. Got to clear off that white noise and stick with what are the facts, folks, what's the process, and respect that process.
But Scott, I wonder when push comes to shove if any of this will count for a row of beans anyway. I mean, Donald Trump's popularity has soared every time he's been indicted. His funding has rocketed. The gap between him and Ron DeSantis has increased. He looks like the front runner. And then on the other side of the coin, the White House are calling the allegations against Hunter Biden insane conspiracy theories. And there we have it. Both sets of political opponents are saying this is made up, this is a political attack, the public don't know what to believe, it probably won't convert anybody on either side. So is this really just a circus?
Well, you know, on the political side, we still got 6 months before the first Republican primary and caucus. And we've got, I think, 15 months before the general election in November. And a famous guy over here named Harold Wilson once said a week's a heck of a long time in politics. So we'll see what happens. I mean, a couple, I think, notes, if you want to go politically, before I give you the big closer here. That is that Donald Trump has actually sunk a bit in the polls for the first Republican contest in Iowa, which is comes up next January. He had been running at about the mid-50s. He's now dropped to around just over 40%, about 44%. So the indictment has had an effect in that state. And there are a lot of other heavyweight candidates out there, whether it's Mike Pence, the former vice president, former UN ambassador Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, the first significant black candidate to run for the Republican nomination. But here's the big thing. Look, if Donald Trump wins the election, if enough people support him, that's fair enough. If he wins legally, rather than trying something such as in January 2021 to take the office illegally, that's fair enough. But that political process should not be used to say, oh, well, the legal process isn't important. The legal process can be dismissed. We don't need the legal process. That is, as I said, attempting to sweep away justice in the names of someone's political advantage. And there's a fundamental in the system. Doesn't matter if the guy's name is Trump, Biden, or Scott Lucas. You don't use politics. You have to be accountable for what you've done before a court of law, not just the American voters.
Absolutely. It must be very frustrating, I think, for the American voters who maybe want to talk about the important things that affect their lives. Yeah. And here, as you said, all the media is giving is white noise and debate about these side issues, really. Maybe they're not side issues. I mean, it is important, But do you see what
Absolutely.
I mean? I think the American public probably want to talk about real things that affect them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, this is the most important election in my lifetime. And I think it's the most important election, arguably, since the end of the American Civil War. You've had a real threat to the American system itself that culminated in the Capitol attack. But you also have to remember we've got women's rights that are out there, including the question of abortion rights. Yeah. We've got the questions of LGBT rights that are out there. We've got the question of immigration and dealing fairly with immigrants. We've got the question of the economy, as everybody does. And the American economy is doing better, but the question is, can it keep doing better in terms of housing, education, healthcare, where there's a serious issue in that we don't have the type of healthcare system in the U.S. that you have here. You know, you see where I'm stacking all of this up? At the end of the day, what matters are two things. We have to have a legal system that works, and that's fair enough. But at the same time, we need security for Americans, which isn't just based on somebody going out and banging out a tweet or some platform like Truth Social saying, it's all about me.